we have a really cool project that I'm super excited about in a really cool space. You guys know that I like to talk about investing on the trend of blockchain, but there's trends within the trends. There's a lot of really cool use cases how blockchain technology has really good use cases, and then there's a lot of applications where I don't think blockchain works. However, the space that we're talking about today is a pretty unique application for blockchain technology, and we're here with Origin Protocol. Anybody who's been watching me knows that I love protocols specifically. Protocols give us a technology that other people can build off of, so that's a really good place to be, as opposed to being at the top, just being a dApp or an app. So where they're specifically targeting is sharing economy stuff, is that right? So sharing economy, typically you might think of Uber, Airbnb, something like that. There's lots of other applications if the technology was scalable. I mean, you have like OCN and they're doing like bike sharing, things like that. So lots of applications there, which is why being a protocol is maybe a better place to be, right?
Yeah, so we are actually more generally a protocol for any decentralized peer-to-peer marketplace.
Okay.
We are focused on sharing economies and the fractional usage of assets and how you represent that on the blockchain. So you mentioned some of the most common examples that come to mind, Airbnb and Uber. We also see it as a very good fit for freelancer marketplaces, for example, where a person's time is the asset, and they may break that into chunks of hours or days or weeks for their clients. So anything peer-to-peer will really work with what we're doing, but we do want to differentiate by providing the features and functionalities that are to be expected out of a sharing economy.
Okay, so the first question I always like to understand is, what is the problem that you're trying to solve?
Yeah.
So I get the sharing economy, however, it seems like the sharing economy is already here.
Absolutely.
So what's the problem
Sure.
with the sharing economy, and what is it that you're solving?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's a few different pieces to this. First thing I want to say is that these sharing economies have done a great job already. They've solved a lot of problems. They've grown into these massive businesses for a reason. So we definitely appreciate what they have done. However, we've seen that once they reach a certain size, it becomes much more easy for them to start to take advantage of their position a little bit as the dominating force, as the monopoly in the space. So what you'll see is things like very high fees. 20, 30, 40% is very common in a lot of these sharing economies.
Right.
You'll also see things like censorship or problems that can come with having a single point of failure. So in San Francisco, for example, when the government stepped in and said that they were going to regulate some of these home sharing marketplaces, they went to Airbnb and they said, hey, we're going to start fining you every day for putting these listings up, and about 50% of their listings in San Francisco came down all at once, and that's because there's a single point of failure. So we're not here to agree or disagree necessarily with why they did it, but the fact that somebody can come in so easily and remove 50% of the listings in a city, or you see other cities where they don't even allow Airbnbs or Ubers to begin with. So
right.
Kind of this regulation and censorship is another big problem that we're solving as well.
So that brings up a great point, one that I really like to talk about. So you talk about, everyone has this buzzword of decentralization, but really it's not decentralization, it's really censorship resistance.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. And so what you're talking about is not decentralization, that's a feature of censorship resistance. So that means that there's no central body for them to come and shut down.
Absolutely.
So how are you censorship resistant? How are you decentralized in that manner?
Yeah, so I would say in general, the blockchain is something that makes it much difficult, more difficult to enforce these regulations or censorship.
You're built on Ethereum, is that correct?
We're built on Ethereum.
So then you have the decentralization, the kind of the censorship resistant model that Ethereum provides?
Yes, not only on the blockchain level, but also our file storage. We use IPFS, the Interplanetary File System, so that our actual content that is that is part of these marketplace listings, all of that is also distributed as well.
Okay.
And for the very same reason, we don't believe that there should be a single point of failure. We're trying to build something that one day, even if a government body came to us and said, hey, you need to take all these listings down, we couldn't do it,
right.
even if we wanted to.
I like that. And so then you also talked about manipulation. So power corrupts.
Yeah.
And so as we've seen, like with Facebook, right, manipulating data and whatnot, I don't know if that's really a problem with Airbnb or Uber today, but you could definitely see how that power could corrupt in the future, favors being done and whatnot, suppressing listings, bringing other listings up. So I can definitely see the value as that as well. So you've built a protocol on Ethereum that now you don't really want to build the marketplace, you want other people to build marketplaces on top. Is that correct? Or
Yeah,
are you going to do both?
Well, To some degree, we're going to do both, but the very foundation of what we're doing is this protocol, and that's the most important piece. It's a horizontal play. We're not betting on any specific vertical necessarily, and we're open to working with all verticals because we want them to build on us. Now, that being said, we have built our own DApp on top of our own protocols, and it's essentially all of the listings for all origin-powered marketplaces will be available through this DApp, and we're also willing and able to roll our sleeves up and build, another marketplace ourselves, help our partners build out these marketplaces because we need to jumpstart this community. One of the big value propositions is shared network effects. So your identity and your reputation on one marketplace is portable to other marketplaces.
I like that.
So for these other marketplaces, it makes user acquisition and user onboarding much more easy.
Yeah, I like that. When I was looking through your information, you talk about, I'm trying to find the problem you're solving, and you talk about removing the rent seekers.
Exactly.
So rent seekers are people who are trying to extract money out of the transaction, and they charge 20 or 30%, like you said, but you're still charging also. So technically, you're a rent seeker. So then your position is that you charge less, I guess.
Well,
but
no, we don't charge any fees actually.
So there
on
would
the
be
protocol level. There's no.
So the DApp developers would probably charge a fee.
The DApp developers may charge a fee. We're going to be totally open to that, and we think in a lot of cases, there's a good reason to charge these fees, right? But the problem that we're trying to solve are these overzealous rent seekers that are charging fees that are just astronomical.
Sure, like Airbnb is crazy.
Absolutely.
So, but what I also like that you talked about is as DApp developers build dApps, decentralized apps for other applications, that user's identity or information can be shared.
Absolutely.
A sharing economy can share the information now. So instead of being siloed across all the different things, it's shared. So I really like that. That's a great model. I'm curious what you think about this. So I believe that today, tech doesn't really matter that much anymore.
Sure.
It's all about the go-to-market strategy and the community around that because everybody just forks everybody's technology.
100%.
So I'm curious what your go-to-market strategy is. You talked about working with some dApps like as partners. Is there some sort of like funds that have been set up? I've seen, like EOS is a big example of that where they're going to be buying people to come over.
Sure.
Do you guys have some sort of funds where you're going to like stimulate that growth?
We've definitely discussed a lot of this. There's nothing set in stone with regards to any funds, but what I will say is that we understand that for us to be successful, the dApps that build on top of us also have to be successful. So to whatever degree we need to work with them or incentivize them to build, we will. Now that being said, we hope our product speaks for itself. One of the main pieces of what we're building is a set of developer tools, JavaScript library, so that if a developer maybe doesn't know Solidity or how to write a smart contract, they can still build a decentralized marketplace very quickly. So we're hoping that the product speaks for itself and it becomes a really easy decision for these developers to leverage what we've already built and not have to reinvent the wheel for all of these problems that all marketplaces face.
Right.
And that way they can focus on what is core to their marketplace, what is specific to their business.
Right.
But to be fair, we're going to have to help jumpstart this and get some of these early wins, definitely.
So John is the business development manager, right? BD.
Yep.
So you're the one working on some of this,
Absolutely.
maybe relationships,
Absolutely.
things like that. So what are the secrets? What do we got? Some big stuff in the works?
We definitely
I'm sure you can't talk about it, but I mean...
Some we cannot talk about, but we have a lot of partners that we've publicly disclosed already. We're up to about 45 partners that have already committed to building on our platform.
Okay.
Some very notable names. Some have even existing businesses. So
name drop a couple?
Yeah, I can name drop a couple. So Spin is probably the most recognizable brand. They're the scooter and mobility company. And they're also releasing something called the PIN protocol, which is like a reputation layer for what they're doing. So we're going to build a pilot with them, both for kind of getting their scooter inventory onto the blockchain, but also leveraging what we're building around identity and what they're building around reputation. There's a company called Service Hero that is a home services marketplace in Southeast Asia. They already have hundreds of thousands of users.
In
and
Asia?
They're starting, in Southeast
cool.
Asia. And they're starting to move some of that to the blockchain. There's a company called Kozaza in Korea. It's a home sharing company. And they already have, again, an existing business They have users, and they're starting to think about how do we move this onto the blockchain to reduce fees for our own users, because they're a very mission-driven company.
It's interesting because I've been in this space for about 2 years now, which is a really long time. and a year ago, even when I started trying to explain this to people, I said, look, you don't understand how revolutionary this is. Like, as revolutionary, as disruptive as Airbnb or Uber has been, this gets rid of Airbnb and Uber. So it's cool to, I've been talking about that for a year, so it's cool to finally see that come into fruition. So back to go-to-market strategy, you talked about your partnerships. I've seen your team is pretty strong. You're the two co-founders, have quite a bit of experience. One of them from Google or YouTube, I think.
One of them's early YouTube.
Some Walmart experience, so some big like Fortune 500 experience, right?
Yeah, so Matt was early YouTube. He was also VP of product at a couple other companies that were acquired, one of which was acquired by Walmart. They have a lot of experience in mass consumer adoption. So YouTube is obviously a really good example of that.
Right.
He was also pretty instrumental in helping us hire Yupan, who was not only the first employee at YouTube, but also the first engineer at PayPal, and he's part of that founding team.
And he's a new addition.
He's our most recent hire,
I don't even know if he's on the website.
We just added him maybe a week ago.
Okay,
and
cool.
So yeah, these guys especially have already done a lot of work in the past as far as mass adoption of these consumer platforms. So we're going to leverage their skill sets, not only for our own use, but to help our partners that are building on top of us as well.
Got it. Now, moving forward, so right now you're in pre-sale, you have a couple phases, we won't get into that too much, but it looks like you have like an alpha version out right now.
Yes.
You're going to launch a test net maybe this quarter, is it this quarter?
So we already have a proof of concept on testnet right now.
Okay.
In a couple weeks we're going to be releasing a beta, which is going to be basically a more built out version of what we have that includes an identity layer. So we're one of the first, or the first, working implementations of ERC 725, which is an identity standard proposed by Fabian, the creator of ERC 20. So the beta that we're releasing in a couple weeks will have this identity layer in there, and hopefully some fractional usage of asset related features and functionality. But it is going to be very much a beta. We want to get something in the hands of our partners to start banging on. And we're targeting Q3 for the release of our mainnet version.
And then what about public sale? Like, when will it be available on exchanges? Are you talking to any exchanges? Is it going to be like on like Gate.io to start, or is there some other exchanges that you're talking to?
So nothing to announce officially on this front.
Of course.
We're basically being as conservative and safe and smart as possible with regards to the regulatory environment. So not a lot to announce yet.
Any kind of timing?
I would say that for us, it's really important for us to have a launched product on mainnet before we do anything with regards to public token sale or anything like that.
So we may not see anything available to the public until the end of the year?
Maybe, potentially. Once we have our product launched, I think we'll be able to give a little bit more information on how we're thinking about things. But right now we're in a bit of a holding pattern as we get guidance from our attorneys, from the regulators in the U.S.
I know everybody's waiting on pins and needles for that to happen, so that makes sense.
Check our Telegram. We're going to have all of our announcements through Telegram channels.
Cool. And then the last thing, I guess, is about the token itself. So you have a token. It's an ERC20 token, I'm guessing. And as a protocol, the dApps that build on it, I'm guessing, would be using your native token for payment?
Yeah, so the idea is actually not for payment as the primary use case. It will be able to be used as a transfer of value if our partners would like to use that, and it might happen in some cases. However, number one, a lot of our partners will probably have their own tokens whose primary use case is a transfer of value, and we're definitely going to be able to work with that. The primary use for our token is really two buckets. Number one, incentivization, and number two, governance. So governance is pretty straightforward. As decisions need to be made over time on important things like, should inflation be introduced, or should we use a certain technology, switch blockchains, who knows?
Right.
We want to make sure that the community is involved, so token holders will have a voice based on how many tokens they hold. The other bucket is incentivization, and that can be broken up into two pieces. One is positive incentives, so you refer buyers and sellers to the network, you're going to get basically rewarded in Origin tokens. You leave reviews, you transact on the platform, especially early on, you're going to get kind of like a cashback type of system, except with Origin tokens instead. And then those, of course, could be used to pay for the services and products that are built on top of Origin. The other piece is the negative side. So in order to put a listing on Origin, you'll have to stake Origin tokens.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah,
so
and that's
good.
a big piece of what we're working on right now is...
Because it's important to have some reason why people want to hold that token. Velocity is not enough. So I know being on Ethereum, it's proof of work, not a staking token. I know they're talking about moving to that.
Yep.
So are you going to wait for that POS to happen, or you have something built in your own protocol?
It's going to be built on our own protocol. We're definitely keeping tabs on how they're thinking about it because they've really thought through a lot of these edge cases when it comes to staking and how it can be attacked, etc. So we're definitely keeping tabs on what they're up to. But for us, it's going to be a relatively simple model, which is you stake tokens to show that your listing is not fraudulent, it's not spam, and if another token holder wants to challenge it and say it is fraudulent or it is spam, they'll have to put up their own tokens to back that, them flagging you, basically.
Like
and then there'll be a vote from some other token holders, and you're at risk of losing your tokens if you lose the vote. So we're still working through the details, of course, but we think it will fundamentally get rid of a lot of the spam that you see plaguing some of these other marketplaces today.
Good, good. Well, we covered a lot. I know you were short on time, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah,
is there anything
absolutely.
else that we should let people know before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I would say check out our GitHub, our Discord, our Telegram channels. We do all of our work out in the open for our engineering communication. It's an open source project, and we have a lot of people.
So where do they find you on all those?
You can find us at originprotocol.com, number one. That's our website. That's where you're going to see all of our announcements. Make sure to check there. And then you can also go to our Discord, which is originprotocol.com/discord. Our Telegram, t.me/originprotocol. And GitHub, github.com/originprotocol.
Yeah, great. So I appreciate that. Like I said, this is a really good trend within the trend. It's something that I've got my eye on. There's a few different players in the space. I think what they're doing is pretty unique. So definitely keep an eye on it, and we'll bring more content to you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, John.